I'm hitting record. Let's see what happens. You guys can all hear me, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're
Mhm.
loud and clear.
Good. Good.
No,
Okay.
the only one we don't want to hear is Doug Kidd. So, here he is. I got to watch what I say.
I got to get a cool background. Obviously, a blurred basement is not as exciting as some of the great pictures I see there.
That's okay.
Anything
One of
works.
these things that comes with time with using Zoom.
Yeah.
You don't want to see all the clutter that I have either.
Yeah, and
On mine.
you got a historic train station. Doug, what is your program going to be on while you're here? And I got my pen in my hand.
Oh, it's going to be the
NRHS.
2025 NRHS convention in Michigan.
Okay, very good.
Figured I
So,
should do it on a chapter night.
yeah, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Weber is going to be here on the 11th. I have my surgery on the 11th. Hopefully, I'll be able to partake in the program.
John, what kind of surgery? What's going on?
Oh, left arm. Got to have the shoulder done.
Oh,
Rotator cuff?
No, I had the rotator on the right. This is replacement.
Okay. All
I
right,
hope he's not
amigo.
lying. I hope he's not lying because I told him I
No.
says in 7 weeks after that surgery, I'm going fishing for 2.5 weeks. Will I be
All
able to
righty.
fish? I got the tickets. Everything is done. It's a done deal.
he didn't tell you that he was going to just replace the arm with a fishing rod, did he?
Yeah. See, I'm probably the only fly fisherman that does this. It's because I taught some of the stuff I taught myself, but I cast with my right hand. And then after I catch the fish, I put the rod in my left hand and fight the fish that way. And so many people have said to me, "Oh, you're left-handed." No, why? Why do you ask? Well, you're fighting the fish with your left hand. Never gave it thought. But anyway, that's how I do it. So I hope I'll be able to fight the fish in Montana.
I love Doug's comment about having a bionic arm with the fishing attachments. That's great.
Oh yeah, yeah. Have you had any other? Oh yeah, last year I was here about the same time. I had a hernia. Oh, and 4 years ago I had a knee. Oh, and I says about I don't know 10 years ago I got a hip.
Jeez.
Good.
I thought you were always hip, John.
Hello, everybody.
Oh God.
Good evening.
Hello,
He's
Gar.
smoking.
It's that time of the month again,
Time of month.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Monthly. It's a monthly.
Okay. Yes. All right. Welcome to the chapter meeting for July. The president was here, but he went home. We tired him out. He trimmed the ivy. Very hot and humid outside, so he decided to go back home. Uh, so he's absent. Vice president is absent. No report. Madam Secretary is on her cruise up to Greenland. No report. Treasurer, that's me.
Yeah, the only report.
The chapter has $78,814 in the treasury. I prepared and submitted the first quarter financial statements for the chapter and the tower to the officers. And I'm currently working on the IRS Form 990, which is due August the 15th. As far as membership goes, we have 139 members. And I do have an application for two new members today, John and Harrison Simon from Mamaroneck, New York. It's a father and son team. So I would like a motion to accept John and Harrison. Okay. No, I said a motion. Rodney and Shields on a second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, they're in. I don't know if they're on tonight, but they said they want to volunteer at the tower, so we'll see.
Yeah, send him the bill.
Yes. Okay. Chapter representative, Mr. Scott. I see you're here.
I am.
You have a report?
Yeah, the convention was really good.
Yeah.
Up in Michigan, and I just arranged with Captain Springer to show it in the August meeting.
Wait, I thought we had Mr. Dyrick set up for August.
Well, that's been changed.
The number 2 entertainment chairman made a change.
Number 2's got to tell number 3 because number 3 is most important.
What
If
happened
you know
to
what I
number
mean.
1?
Chief?
Thomas Dyer.
So Thomas is not in August?
No, he's going to be in September, not the tower meeting, though.
Oh,
Wait, so who's doing the August meeting?
Who's on first?
Mr. Scott. All right.
Yes.
That
Okay,
is correct. Yeah, anyway, nothing earth-shattering happened at any of the meetings. And we're still working on the convention site for next year. The
Okay.
fall conference is going to be in Milwaukee, first weekend in October to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Wisconsin chapter. All are welcome to attend.
Okie doke. Thank you.
so who's got next one, Chief?
Doug Scott has next one.
That's that?
Yes, thank you. Okay, committee
That's that.
committee reports. The tower. The tower is moving along. We continue to have some interesting visitors who are fully engaged during their tours. Saturday, I had 2 mechanical engineers, and they couldn't get over the machine on the second floor. They spent a great deal of time down there studying the mechanical interlocking machine. So that's always nice to see. Oh yeah, we also had a lady who used to be a mechanic at Sperry Rail working on their inspection cars. So always get interesting visitors. The Arts Festival is this Saturday and Sunday. Hope to see everybody there and hoping for good weather and a busy weekend. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I want to thank Jim Mesher for coming up. He trimmed the ivy, but it was too hot and humid, so he decided to go home and relax. Let's see. Shows. There's no shows scheduled right now. Special events. The next special event would be the chapter picnic, and I'm working with Mr. Mesher to come up with a date. It looks like it'll be September 14th or September 28th, but I'll get back to you as soon as I find out. Entertainment. Mr. Shields. Neil MacCormick from the Conrail Historical Society is tonight.
How did he know that?
I'm sorry?
August is Doug Scott.
And August is Doug Scott. Thank you.
Wow, it's good to see the number 1 entertainment chairman is right on the ball.
Actually, he's
Good to have you back.
he's quite psychic, Chief. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is.
We in September too.
Yeah.
When are we going to
September,
see?
September,
Montana?
the rest of the year is open. Is that correct, number 2?
Yes. When?
Okay, yes.
When is he going to show us Montana?
When are we? You'll see that in the manifest, actually.
Oh.
He didn't do much rail fanning.
Oh.
Okay. Refreshments. They're stuck in traffic, so eventually our dessert will arrive. Yes. Any old business? Seeing none. Any new business? Seeing none. Any announcements?
Yes.
Stuart. You want to come up here so I can hear you? Here comes Stuart.
On Saturday, I was at the Liberty Science Center in Jersey City, New Jersey, and they have a very big Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western operating railroad. It kind of duplicates what it looked like circa 1958 with the Truesdale coal colliery and the towns and whatever. And it was very impressive. It's not HO, but it wasn't O gauge. It was something in between. I forgot to ask the gauge, but it's a very impressive layout. It's a tribute to the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western, which is mostly part today of NJ Transit. I got there using the subway. I live in White Plains. I took the picked up a friend. We parked in the Bronx, took the subway to the World Trade Center, went to the Oculus, and we took the PATH train. And from the PATH train, we took the New Jersey, the Hudson Bergen light rail, which leaves you off right in front of the Liberty Science Center. So if you have a chance, go and visit the Liberty Science Center in Jersey City, New Jersey.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Any other announcements? Seeing none, I have a motion to enter to adjourn. Mark, and seconded by Rod. All in favor? Okay, the time is
8:08.
8:08. Not bad.
Oh, good. We ended just in time.
Okay. Mr. Springer, since our dessert has not arrived, would you like to start the show now, or
Life's
to
a
you.
real bitch, ain't it? The
say
dessert.
again?
I said life's a bitch. You haven't received your dessert yet. Wow.
I know it's tough.
Now you know how all of us feel.
Yeah, but we know it's coming though.
That's true.
So it's up to you if you want to start now.
Yeah, no, we can start now.
Okay.
Frank, who wants to go? Frank, do you have to go to bed early?
No, Neil is going to go first.
Okay.
He's going to cover portions of the Conrail Historical Society. Then I'm going to do a middle. And then he's going to continue after I wrap up, and I'm going to try to keep mine really quick. He's going to talk about the closed pouch mail that was handled by Conrail.
Yep. So,
You're right.
so is the entertainment supposed to start? Am I good, clear to go? Get a green signal here?
You got a green board.
Good, excellent. So what I'm going to do, I will, let's see here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. This presentation was an outgrowth of a conversation I had with John and Frank about a couple articles that I ran in the Conrail Quarterly magazine for the spring issue about Conrail's handling of mail in the 1970s. And that was the genesis for having this discussion. And I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited to present to this group. And kind of what I would like to do is cover a little bit about myself, introduce myself and who I am, talk a little bit about the Conrail Historical Society, which is the organization that I'm a member of and I'm involved with. And then what I'd like to do is cover the heart of the discussion tonight is an article that was submitted to the Conrail Quarterly magazine by Frank, who you know, about the last RPO train that was operated, actually was operated by Amtrak, but it was under contract through Conrail. And then I'll tell the story of how that Frank's story then turned into a little bit of a research project on my part to understand a little bit more about Conrail's other early mail trains, which were intermodals, and how that evolved over time. So that's kind of the topics that I'd like to cover tonight. And I'll have Frank cover the part about the RPO train since he wrote the article, and I'm grateful for his contribution to that. It was really interesting to see it, and I'll give Frank a chance to talk about that. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a lifelong rail fan. I remember as a kid sort of walking around the park pretending I was a train when I was 4 or 5 years old. I've just been obsessed with trains my whole life. I'm a Conrail predecessor, and D&H fan. I've always, I think if I had to pick a single spot to go, it'd be the Southern Tier line west of Binghamton, through Hornell and Corning and out to Buffalo. I love the history of railroads and their operations, and I just been a rail fan my whole life. I've never worked for a railroad. I know many of you on this call have, and I had aspirations at various points in time to work for one, but it just never ended up going in that direction. But I've moved around a lot. I grew up in New York, and lived in upstate New York as well. And then as I started my career, I worked in New York City, moved out to Minnesota for 12 years, and now living in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I've recently retired as of April 1st. It's phenomenal. For those of you who haven't done it, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. It has allowed me to really delve into some of the things that I've been sort of putting off activities. I was really a railfan lurker for most of my life. I didn't have much time for getting involved in railfan group activities or even doing much railfanning, but I'm now diving into it and being editor of the Conrail Quarterly, which is the publication of the Conrail Historical Society, is a good example of that. And I've been having a blast getting involved and learning how to put out a magazine and working with contributors like Frank to help tell stories that are worth telling about Conrail and about the history of the railroad industry, which is to me fascinating. It was kind of funny when I think about it. 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, Rudy Garbely, who was the editor for the Conrail magazine, put out a call to say, "Hey, I'm interested in handing off my responsibilities to somebody else." And at the time, I had been thinking about retirement, and I raised my hand. And he asked me a question. He said, "What experience do you have in putting together a railfan magazine?" And I said, "Well, not very much." I said, "But I do think I know something about what a good railfan magazine looks like because I've read thousands of them over the course of my life." So I kind of use that as my main qualification for becoming editor of the Conrail Quarterly, and it's been an interesting experience. It's about, the sort of the logistics of how to use the software packages that are involved. I've kind of been involved with technology and computers for most of my career, so I had some working knowledge, but there's a big difference when you actually dive into things like Adobe InDesign and Photoshop and start actually having to make photographs look good and size text to sort of fit the box. And I think some of the most interesting aspects has been trying to figure out how to put a magazine together and making sure that you get 40 pages of material. And then if you have too little, how do you fill in the gap? If you have too much, how do you trim it back? That's been great. I've now had the time to get involved in doing that, and it's been a lot of fun. So I think all of my past experience at being reading all those train magazines, CTC board, Rails Northeast. I mean, you name it. I've got them all. The shelves behind me along the basement wall here are filled with them, and I'm in the process of digitizing them and creating in my own personal collection. But it's been really I think that's been a big aid in being the editor of the Conrail magazine. So enough about me. Let me talk about the Historical Society. So. The CRHS is dedicated to the preservation of Conrail's history, which includes equipment preservation. There's a project right now to restore one of the only cabooses built by Conrail very early on, built by Fruit Growers Express. And that's an example of some of the equipment preservation that the society is involved with. The Conrail Museum, which is housed in an old high cube boxcar in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, and it's got displays in it.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why is Fruit Growers Express did they make a caboose?
That's a good question.
I know I got lots of them.
Yeah, I know that they were involved in building refrigerated cars, and I think
Yeah.
they also built other equipment. I don't know the full range of the other equipment they did build, but they built them. I think there was the Pacific Fruit Express, which was, I think, Southern Pacific and more Western oriented, obviously Pacific. Fruit Growers Express was more focused on bringing produce from Florida up the East Coast. And so they were headquartered, I believe, in Washington, D.C. or somewhere in Virginia. And they had a manufacturing facility in Alexandria, Virginia, where the Conrail cabooses were built. I don't know. They must have gotten a good deal from them because I don't think of them as being a typical rail car manufacturer. But there you go. They were the ones that won the bid, and they built 138, I believe, cabooses for Conrail. The only order of cabooses that Conrail ever made. Everything else that they had was inherited.
Were those the big ones with the bay windows?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
May I jump in here?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, yes, actually, their headquarters, I'm not sure if it was in Washington, D.C., but it was top floor of a building that was on Duke Street in Alexandria, and then their shop was down the street along the RF&P tracks. And basically, they did mostly assemble refrigerator cars. And they were manufacturing cabooses. They also won a bid. I remember seeing some National Railways of Mexico cabooses being produced there
Interesting.
and being shipped off. So I guess it was one of these things that they basically worked from kits a lot of times. I'm not sure if they acquired these kit packages from other car builders and then just did the assembly. But yeah, they made cabooses, and of course by that time cabooses were dying, so you didn't have a whole lot of companies producing them, and they may have been the only game in town at the very end. So back to you, Neil, and thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank, for that additional information. I didn't realize. I knew they were headquartered somewhere in that general area, but Duke Street in Alexandria. There you go. That's great. Um, the magazine, Conrail Quarterly, and of course, there's an archive, and the archive is actually located. There's an archive room inside that boxcar, which is the museum. So part of the boxcar, most of the boxcar is the museum, but there's a room that is serves as kind of the working area for the archive. And I'll show you some pictures. Actually, here we go. There's the boxcar. That's the side of the boxcar opposite to the entrance. But you can see it sitting there in Shippensburg in the sun. Um, you can see in the top right is the inside of the museum, some of the displays that are in the museum. And on the bottom right, you'll see one of the archive work sessions that we had back in April, where volunteers came in and were helping to go through all of the boxes of material that have been contributed. And I actually joined that session, that particular session. It was really interesting to see, all the different, the documents, photographs, sort of swag from sales presentations and things like that, coffee mugs, all kinds of stuff. And it was really interesting to go through that. And you can see some of the volunteers working in the museum part of the boxcar was kind of overflow workspace for the archive work session. Um, the top center there, you can see the work being done on some of the equipment, including one of the cabooses, doing some sanding there. And then on the bottom left, you'll see one of our member meetings, which happened to be there at Perrysville, Maryland. I think it's an NRHS chapter that might be based there. And they hosted us for a meeting at Perrysville. And then at the center there is the cover image from the latest issue of the Conrail Quarterly magazine, which is the one that Frank's article appeared in, and also the other topic, which is the intermodal mail trains that Conrail had. So that's going to be the topic for today's conversation. So that's the introduction of myself and the CRHS. And so what I'll do now actually is hand over to Frank, and Frank can go through his article on Conrail's role in helping run and operate the last railway post office in the United States. So over to you, Frank.
All right. Well, you'll stop sharing your screen first. Somehow.
I think I did.
You did.
I still see it up on the.
Oh,
No. We're looking at Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, Neil, you're fine.
Yeah, Frank, your picture is not. We don't see you.
You might be frozen.
He's
Yeah.
frozen.
Yes, we see Nathan the cat.
Yeah, Frank is rigid and it's frozen.
Yeah.
Now we see
Okay.
Frank.
Now we're back in action. It
Yes.
says my internet connection's unstable, but my little light there is just burning just as bright as possible. So anyway, let's get this party started. I want to share. Oh, come on, let's get going here. John, I'm sure you remember the days of running a locomotive that if anything can go wrong, it will.
Yeah.
Well, now I got the hourglass again.
So Neil, I think a picture of me in my Thompson jumper and hat that I wore when I hired on the Penn Central and wore it into Conrail would look a lot better than that mannequin you got with a glow vest on it.
Are you all seeing my screen now?
Well, it says you started screen sharing.
But there's
All
no content visible.
Okay, well, let me click on the button. Let me hope. Yeah, say, Doug, maybe you can do a quick prayer for me. Okay, now there's that.
Okay.
There we go.
See
You
the
got it.
application. All right, and then I gotta still click from the beginning.
Yeah, and then there's something else you do and you get the full screen too.
Yeah, you got slideshow, and then you go to from the beginning.
Yeah, okay, and then I also want to start recording. I hope
That's
that
at the
doesn't.
bottom.
I hope that doesn't screw up everything.
No, you have a little box down there on the bottom, an icon.
Well, now my screen is dark. I've just got the hourglass.
Yeah, I see you moving the hourglass. Okay.
Okay,
Alex,
everybody sees that now, right?
We see your station, Frank.
Okay, all right.
Countdown to the end.
I want to start recording.
When you bring that hourglass down to the bottom of your screen, do you get it? The icons light up on your end?
Well, you see, what I got to do is get out of full screen mode.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get back over. And where did Zoom go? Zoom.
Frank, you're on Windows, right?
Yeah, I'm on Windows 10.
If you bring your cursor all the way to the very bottom, does your drawer open up and you can click on Zoom?
Well, I see now I've got my menu bar down at the bottom, and I'm trying to click on Zoom so that I can click on record. Screen sharing, meeting controls.
I don't know if it means anything. I've never noticed it, but up at the top in that taskbar under the
There
word
it is. It says
slideshow.
record.
Yeah.
You're
I
right,
want-
John.
You want to know anything, Frank? Ask a New Yorker. We're very well versed in knowing everything.
That's right. Between Harrison and Garrison, there's no comparison. Except,
Hey, Frank, I think you need your grandchildren to help you with your computer.
yeah.
It looks like it's running real slow.
Well,
And you probably got a lot of applications running.
No, actually, I don't have.
Well, it's something your grandchildren need to look at because I
The
think your
hourglass.
computer's just running slow.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, countdown to the end. Okay, so I'm going to.
Yep, I see the message that says
do
you're
it.
recording.
Click on the red button, I guess, right?
Yeah, we saw it up there. Frank, don't worry about it because I'm recording it, and
Okay, no, but I've got that. Okay,
yeah. Oh,
so
okay.
I
Because I
think
can play it for you another time.
all right. Okay. You know, they use so much of this artificial intelligence. Well, I'm sorry I've killed so much time out of your
All
time.
right, Frank. It's all right.
All right, so now this was originally an article, as Neil mentioned. If you go through a text article, it's a little hard without just reading it to everybody to go ahead and communicate the information. So actually, what I did is I changed it around to a presentation. I added some information that's not in the article, so Neil, take note. And then when we get into it a little bit further, I'm going to ask Neil to also sort of chip in. So let me see if I hit page down, and that takes me to the next one. Okay. So you all see presentation overview now. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to cover four things. The fourth is obviously the best: summary and closing. We'll talk briefly about New York and Washington RPO history, and this is something that I really did not do in the article. And then we'll talk quickly about postmark covers. Covers are envelopes. Postal history collectors call anything that's postmarked as postal history, and they call them covers because they cover the letter that's inside. And then railway postal clerks, we'll talk about them briefly. And then again, we'll get back to the summary and closing so that we can get back over to Neil. Now, from a prior presentation, you've seen that badge before, so I don't need to tell you all about it, except that basically it is essentially as close as there is a logo to the railway mail service and the postal train station. It was this badge. Okay. Now, some of this is you've heard before, some of this you have not. The first permanent railway post office was August 28th, 1864, between Chicago and Clinton. That is when the railway mail service started as a part of the post office department. The interesting thing is the Washington and New York railway post office was a second route established within the railway mail service. It started, about a month a bit later on October 14th, 1864. So it basically operated for over about a century, a little over a century. Not very many things that we do today are going to run a century. And back in 1864, the route was put together with portions of the B&O, PB&W, or PW&B, and the Pennsylvania Railroad for its 232 miles. Now, during 1866, they flipped it around, so the route name changed from New York and changed to New York and Washington, and then that name remained unchanged from 1866 all the way to 1977. The New York, Baltimore, and Washington was another New York and Washington Railway Post Office route. It was established in 1891, operated over the Jersey Central to Jersey City, from Jersey City to Bound Brook, and then the Reading, which took it to Philadelphia, and then the B&O between Philadelphia and Washington. So that one ended up being discontinued in 1958. When both terminals in Manhattan and Washington Union Station were constructed in the 1910s, really the Pennsylvania Railroad dominated the passenger, freight, express, and mail traffic between New York and Washington, D.C. And the way it reached Washington, D.C. was a very clever ploy. For those who do not know that history, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was given the exclusive access to, in its charter, to Washington, D.C. The Pennsylvania Railroad had a charter that allowed it to build some branch lines not to exceed, I think, 40 miles or something like that. So very cleverly, it built a line down to Bowie, Maryland, and then which continued then down to Pope's Creek, Maryland. And then they built this little branch. It was just under the 40 miles or so into Washington, D.C. And that was was called the Magruder branch, and that obviously became their main line. And the rest of the line from Bowie down to Pope's Creek was a secondary. So PRR tricked the B&O and got in there, and of course, once it got its foot in the door, it really did dominate the traffic in the Northeast Quarter. Now, things really began to change in 1967. There was a postmaster, an assistant postmaster general named Hartigan, who decided, railway post offices are a thing of the past, and he was just like an axe in a forest. He was just chopping things away. And most railway post office routes, if they weren't discontinued entirely, they were discontinued to the point where they only had one round trip on a route. New York and Washington had a little bit more service than that. But then by 1971, on Amtrak Day, it really lost all of its other trains that had RPOs, and what became trains 3 and 4 continued. Now, this is where Neil has been invaluable to me, because I had no idea. I thought it was a Conrail operated train. Neil advises that Conrail did in fact have the contract, but basically it subcontracted with Amtrak to provide the engine and train crew to operate that train. And of course, the clerks in the car were all post office employees. So that was very illuminating. That's an aspect that I was not aware of, and I really had not seen anything written about. So, as according to Neil, April 1st, 1976 was C Day for Conrail Day, and trains 3 and 4, as I just mentioned, were Amtrak operated trains. Conrail apparently operated commuter passenger trains over the Northeast Quarter, but apparently because Amtrak, because the New York and Washington Railway Post Office operated the full length between New York and Washington, Amtrak had the operational responsibility. June 30th, 1977 was the end of a contract year. The Postal Service had a physical year that ended on June 30th, and then began a new physical year on July 1st. And so, since they did not renew the contract with Conrail, when the trains came to a rest in their respective terminals in July 1st, the crews walked away. The mail was unloaded, and that was the end of the New York and Washington. Now, there was a ceremony at Washington Terminal at which Assistant Postmaster General Bolger had presided. He later became a Postmaster General, and a plaque and a photograph was taken of each clerk. I've got some of those photographs, but I don't have them where I've been able to locate them to scan them. And unlike the usual consist for the New York and Washington trains 3 and 4, they added a club car instead of the crew rider car. And there is an article apparently in 1977 Trains magazine in which the train consists and the car numbers are identified, and the engine numbers are identified for both the north and southbound trips. And so the southbound train also had a club car. I've never been clear whether or not they had a similar presentation to the clerks going down out of New York City, but they certainly made a big deal about it in Washington, D.C. And then this has been a little bit of a puzzle to me, because this is what appears in the NRPC Northeast Quarter Region General Order that says under Conrail that the schedules for 3 and 4 are withdrawn on August the 1st. I'm not clear what happened between July 1st and August the 1st in 1977. That requires some further research. Maybe Neil can shed some light on that if he comes across some other documents. It could be that they continued to operate storage mail on the trains on the interim, but in any event, it did not last. And this was also
Frank.
Yes, go ahead.
Ask Tommy Wyatt. Would that have been in a general order?
Yes, yeah, yes, it was. I think Frank, didn't I send you that copy when we did this article a couple of years ago?
Yeah, well, that's right. Tommy is actually the go-to guy. John, I want to recognize John. He said he had a bunch of timetables up in his attic and it was hot up there. And if I couldn't get him anyplace else, that he'd go up there and sweat to death and really do his service for the Railway Mail Service Library. But Tommy came to the rescue and he sent me a variety of pages. In fact, I think I had to go back to the trough again to make sure that I had the column that showed the station names because they're not on all the pages. And so I double dipped with Tommy. But anyway, so this is where it came from. Plus, it's not on the screens that I'm going to show, but there are notes pages that hopefully will be sent by Garth or John to everybody for this portion of the presentation that does show the schedules. I pieced them together, because they appeared over the course of about 6 pages, and you had to do a bunch of copying, pasting to come up with basically 2 pages that showed the entire route from New York to Washington for train 3, and the same from Washington to New York for train 4. So thank you very much, sir, for your kind support, both of you gentlemen. Now, in the postal bulletin, most railway post office discontinuances did not receive any kind of advance notice, but they made a big to-do out of this. And they really made a big issue about the cachet that was going to be applied. Like, oh, that's such a special thing. And so they went into some detail about where you submitted your covers that you wanted to get postmarked and how much space to allow for a cachet and where to put the stamp and all of that. So this was a notice that went out in June, about less than 30 days in advance of the discontinuance. And they got quite a lot of letters. And so many covers were sent in for postmarking on the last trip, or at least to recognize the last trip. I want to talk about that now, because not everything you see is real. Now, these are 2 of those philatelic covers that were sent in. And so you could see the kind of cachet that appears at the left. They use one cachet for both. Just says between New York and Washington. They didn't have a separate cachet for one direction or the other. They did have a different postmarker, one for train 4, one for train 3. And before I go to the next slide, look at the width of the lettering of the RMS between the killer bars right there by the stamp, because that's the way you can find out that these covers probably never saw the inside of New York and Washington RPO. They were not sorted into the train. They were strictly philatelic, and they did not even use the real postmarking devices. So this is what was applied. Now, I reversed the images so that you could read them, but they had basically a rubber stamp. It may have actually been connected to sort of a device that you can press down to get an even stroke and a clear imprint, because philatelic and postal history collectors are real picky about wanting to have things nice and clear and pretty. Pretty doesn't count in my book. I'd rather have something that's genuine, it's a little blurry, than something that's contrived. And then the postmark, see those big letters, RMS. This is the printing block for train 4 postmarks. This is what was applied to all the train covers that were submitted to Washington, D.C. for postmarking. And they're all rubber stamps. It's more like a printer's block. Now, this is a real cover. Notice the letters RMS in the killer. That's much narrower than what you see. There's no point in getting this special cachet. A lot of people use their own cachets if they were taking them to the train, or the crew members on the train actually provided their own cachets. But this is real, and that's a real steel postmarker. And there's, you can see other little differences if you compare the covers, the way the train 3 is shaped and so on. The next cover for train 4, it had the date flipped around at 30 June instead of June 30th. This the Midwest Historical Society had an in with one of the people who was working on the train, so they sent the covers to them. This really went inside the RPO. Now, I can't attest to how much mail was actually worked on that last run. I think a lot of the clerks were strolling back and forth into the club car and more talking than there was really sorting mail, but there was mail on the train. So, and then because, just so that you know, there were 2 railway post office cars in train 3 and 2 railway post office cars in train 4. They had the letter ends adjoining, so that the general foreman, a third supervisor, could go back and forth between the cars if necessary. There were 2 clerk in charges, one for each car, and then a general foreman. So each of those 3 people on each train had their own postmarker. So you're going to find variations in these real steel devices for trains that were postmarked on the train. Not very many of these survived. They're much scarcer. But for most of the people, who really cares? There's a fellow named Sidney Fingerhood. I bring him up because he was an avid postal historian. One of the first people that I ever met on the New York and Washington. I was going over there. I was a junior in high school, and it was advanced time for the New York and Washington RPO heading northbound, and I think I mailed a letter, and Sid came to the door. He was the registered mail clerk. He came to the door and asked me a question that I had no clue what he was talking about. He said, "Oh, have you found any good route agent markings lately?" He really collected the good stuff, and he spent a lot of money. He had a great collection, but and unfortunately he passed away. But anyway, Sid, his cycle did not coincide with the last run of the train. So therefore, his last trip was about a week earlier. He made up a special cover. That cover that you see with all the postmarks around it were discontinued RPOs. That was something that somebody in the Mobile Post Office Society had created for last run trips, and he just used it. So if you collect other railway post office covers, you'll see that. But he had every member of the crew on his last run on train 4, June 24th, 1977, had everybody sign it. And many of those people were around for the last run. So now we're going to talk briefly. This is topic 3 out of 4. We're going to talk about the railway postal clerks. Now, this picture is taken by the Baltimore Sun during the station stop at Baltimore. They're loading mail. Baltimore was a heavy user. The nice thing about the New York and Washington, in 226 miles, you had 5 different metropolitan areas that it serviced. Washington, Baltimore, let me see, it's Wilmington and Trenton, Newark and New York, and so there was a heavy mail volume, and it wasn't like many railway post offices where the endpoints were the busy points. It was hectic, and it was carrying a lot of mail, which was the reason why it had 2 railway post office cars. Going northbound, it sorted. There was a clerk or 2 that were sorting New York City mail going northbound. Coming southbound, there was a clerk sorting Baltimore mail, Baltimore City mail, and then another one that was sorting for Washington, D.C. So they did some first-class mail handling that it just is not done at all today. Now, the problem for me and for postal historians is that by 1977, the loose leaf schedules that had prevailed in the 1960s and then the hardbound copies that existed prior to that in the mid-50s and before, 1977, they went to computers, and they had the National Air and Surface schedules. They were basically those big if for anybody who remembers the early days of computers, you had these big green printout pages that it must have been 2 feet wide and 2 feet. They were wider than they were long, but anyway, they had green bars in them, period, like every 5 lines. If you printed out the schedules in there, you would have had it. But you see, all that stuff was kept in computers, and they were updating it daily. And as a result, nobody was ever saving the files that showed what was in effect on a particular day. Actual train consist reports, other than that article in Trains magazine that mentions what the consist was on the last runs, they just don't exist. And so it's my expectation that if you use that last run trip report, basically you had a GG1, you had 2 mail storage cars, you had the 2 railway post office cars, 60-foot apartments with a 10-foot bungalow, and that the letter ends were adjoining each other. And then you had a cabin car for the crew rider. And that was basically what it was. Now, in earlier years, there was, I think, more storage mail on those trains, so the trains were likely longer. The usual number of clerks in each car was about 12. And since they were the last railway post office trains to operate, you had to be at the top of the seniority list to be able to hold a place on the New York and Washington after about 1971. All the other lines, a lot of the clerks tried to get on it. They didn't want to go into the post offices. Of course, many of them had enough seniority that they could go ahead and retire, and they did. There were some that were on the line. They had line seniority that sort of trumped everything else. And no, I'm not talking about Donald. Then, for the few vacancies that were able, the other clerks from other lines could bid in on those assignments. By 1977, given you've had another 6 years of RPO operations, that moved everybody's needle closer to retirement. And many of the people, when they did walk away from the train on July 1st, 1977, they walked into retirement. This is General Foreman John Kay preparing a trip report. That's mail being loaded onto PC 6597 at Washington Terminal. Now, this is during the period that Conrail was providing this equipment, as I understand it. And Neil, I'll defer to you, but so it inherited the Penn Central equipment, and that may have included also the cars that were used for storage mail. So even though it's still stenciled Penn Central, it was basically a Conrail car. They never bothered to repaint it in Conrail colors with Conrail lettering on the name board. This is the clerks that were there. They were not really on the last run, but they got everybody out of the 2 cars to get together for a group shot. Patrick McCabe was the photographer for the U.S. Postal Service. He knew how to take good photographs. This is about probably the only really good photograph that's well posed. He got up high and managed to get just about everybody's face. I recognize some of the faces. I will mention the guy who's sitting at the far right. He's got a cap on. That's Thomas J. McCauley. I knew him when he was on the Washington and Florence. He goes back to the earliest days that I started watching RPOs. And I rode up with him to a reunion up in New York City for the New York and Wash, and saw him at some of the Washington and Florence reunions. But a very distinguished crowd. Most, if not everybody, is now resting in peace. And as for me, the railroad post office cars are rusting in pieces. So we had an end after 113 years of RPO operations, and there's just not many things that we do today that's going to last a century. The network of railway post offices eroded during the 1960s, and that was really the final chapter The New York and Wash was really more of a postscript. That last 6 years, everybody knew somewhere along the way the end was going to come. It was really only a question of when. And in fact, some people really wondered why it continued to exist. In my article and in the notes pages, I do add some thoughts of 3 reasons why I think it did continue to exist. But in any event, it was incompatible with the way that mail processing was going. And so that is the end of the New York and Wash. So now Neil MacCormick is going to then pick up with a discussion about closed pouch mail, mainly in intermodal trains, and he's going to continue the presentation. But I've got 2 more slides. I will ask if anybody's got any questions for this portion. Good, I'm glad.
Frank, we have a picture that Bob Gamling took of the Penn Central RPO. I wonder if it's that same number.
It may be. I'll tell you what, let's do that at the end of Neil's.
Yeah.
Let's get him back on the board, and then we'll see where we go from there.
An interest.
Yeah.
So, and then this is my contact information. This is the notes pages. And that's, of course, if you really want to see, you've heard about these DVDs before. If you really want to see how mail was sorted on trains, this is available from the Railway Mail Service Library. That's all she wrote. And end of slideshow. Click here to export your video. Okay, well, I'm not going to, I want to click here. Okay, all right. Export video. Let me get it back over to Neil. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Great. Thank you, Frank. That was actually, I learned a few things from your presentation. We should have had this presentation before I ran the story. But anyway, great presentation. When Frank sent me the story, I was really intrigued by it for 2 reasons. One, of the Conrail connection and the railroad connection. But as a kid, I was also a stamp collector. So seeing the combination of those 2 things come together was really, really pretty cool. Actually, I will, because I know this is a group that probably really, really likes to see photographs, I will share one photograph. This was the engine that led number 3. I believe it was number 3. I have to get my
I think this was on train 4, and then train 3 was number was 901.
Right, you're right. So this was on train 4. So this was on the northbound train, not the southbound. But this is the engine that the Amtrak president, I believe, at the suggestion of the Trains magazine editor David P. Morgan, suggested to the Amtrak president, who I think was Alan Reistrup at the time, that this engine should lead train 4 northbound on the last run. So this is a picture of 4935. 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks before the last run, it was in Harrisburg, photographed by Alan Page. And as I say, I hope they cleaned the front of the engine off before it ran on that last RPO trip, because it does look like it's got a little bug splatter or mud splatter there. But the interesting thing about Frank's article was it led me down a rabbit hole about another topic that was related, which the closed pouch mail topic that Frank mentioned, about Conrail's other early mail trains. And these were intermodals. From the first Atlantic Region employee timetable, and this is where I sort of uncovered this, I saw the trains 3 and 4. You can see them there on the westward and south, northward, westward and eastward timetables. And then you could see the National Limited and all these Amtrak trains. And then you could see train 9, train 11, train 8, train 10. And I said, oh, these are not RPO trains. What are they? And then I discovered further a little bit more information about, these trains were listed alongside passenger trains. They were considered first class. And I thought that's interesting. So they're not RPO trains. They're listed as first class trains. What are they? And what I uncovered is that Conrail had 2 other pairs of mail trains, one 8 and 9 between Kearny and Chicago 47th Street, and they were intermodal, and they ran as intermodals. And then 10 and 11 ran between Kearny in New Jersey and East St. Louis. There were no RPOs on these trains. There were no baggage or express cars. It was strictly trailer on flat car intermodal. But they operated them as first class trains. And I thought that was really interesting. And so this is the basis for the article. Penn Central also operated mail trains in the late 60s to the early 70s. There was more RPOs. I think, certainly prior to 1971, there were probably RPOs on other Penn Central routes. They ran with baggage express cars. They ran with trailer and flat car intermodal, and they ran with flexi vans. But by the time of Conrail, everything but the trailer on flat car intermodal had been phased out. Um, Penn Central's routes, some of them went up to New England. I was talking to John about this. I think there were some trains that ran up to Springfield from Washington. And there were also trains over the former New York Central lines, the water level route, the Chicago line. But by the time Conrail came into existence, the only ones were 3 and 4, which is what Frank talked about, and then 8, 9, 10, and 11, the intermodals. These were the mail trains that survived into Conrail. So, um, as I mentioned, they were listed in the employee timetables as first class trains, right alongside the passenger trains. I was really intrigued by that. I thought that was very interesting. They operated under passenger train rules as long as they were under 60 cars. They were not listed in the Conrail freight schedules at the time. So there were TV trains in the freight schedules, but these trains did not appear in the freight schedules at all. But in 1977, at about the time that 3 and 4 were being discontinued, the RPO trains, things started changing. And in March of 1977, you started to see the introduction of more familiar Conrail mail symbols. Mail 8, 9, 10, and 11 made their appearance. In June, 3 and 4, the RPO trains made their last runs. But the interesting thing is, even though the mail trains started to appear in the freight schedules, the old references to 8, 9, 10, and 11 and some of the employee timetables continued for a while, and in some cases into the early 1980s. So they kind of had dual representations, both in the freight schedules as freight trains and as first class sort of mail trains in the employee timetables alongside passenger train schedules. So I think there was this interesting time of transition where Conrail went from being sort of the legacy railroad model to the new sort of freight only world that Conrail ultimately latched onto for its success. So here's an excerpt from the March 1977 freight timetables. You can see the introductions of the mail train symbols. These are the first time they showed up. And these were intermodal trains, not RPO, not baggage express, not flexi van. But as I say, the practice of representing these mail trains in the freight timetables, which you can see represented there on the right-hand side of this screen, versus them also showing up in the employee timetables as first class trains on the left-hand side of the screen. These were timetables the same point in time in May of 1979. You can see them as first class trains on the left, as freight trains on the right. So they kind of had this dual mode. And the employee timetables made mention of the mail trains having the authority to run at passenger speeds, assuming they were under 60 cars in length. And that was kind of an interesting. These were high priority trains. Conrail was trying to, be successful and moving into, higher priority, presumably more lucrative freight traffic. And so this idea of having this special class of train, these mail trains, made business sense for them and became an area of success as they really built out their freight intermodal business, in the 1980s and certainly going into the 1990s. So this was kind of an interesting time of transition from kind of the old worldview of mail trains being equivalent to passenger trains to mail trains and the closed pouch model that Frank mentioned being operated as freight trains. So now what I thought I'd do is start not throw out so many words and text and all that, let's show some pictures of trains. This is a picture that I ran in the article in the magazine. This is a Thomas Post photo from the collection of Dave Rosie, who's been very generous in sharing some of his photos of Conrail in the Midwest in particular. And here's a shot of eastbound number 8 on the very first day of Conrail in April 1st, 1976. So this still looks very much like a Penn Central train. And you could see as a mail train, it's not as long as the intermodals that certainly Conrail ran in later years. It's short, it's fast, and it's running on the Fort Wayne line eastbound at Wheeler, Indiana. And you can see the nickel plate there on the left-hand side is running parallel at this point. Here's another shot of eastbound 8 a little later in August of 77. What's interesting about this is that officially, the mail train started in the intermodal yard, 47th Street, which is further south of Chicago's downtown. But here's evidence of the mail trains actually starting a little closer to the post office in downtown Chicago. And there was a small ramp, intermodal ramp there near the post office. This train then continued on to 47th Street, which was the main intermodal ramp for Chicago, and it picked up additional cars. So the mail train, showing its roots as a mail operation, starting its journey near the Central Post Office in Chicago. So this was in August of 1977. I love this shot. This was the cover of the magazine, the issue, the spring issue. You can see some commuters here at Princeton Junction, New Jersey. I guess they're probably heading into New York or up to Newark, and they get a treat this morning. They get Mail 10 coming through, and it's running. This, according to the schedule of the time, it was running a little late, but nonetheless, here it is. You could see that it's relatively short, maybe 20, 30 cars. The mail trains coming east would drop off a big chunk of their train for Philly at near Frankfurt Junction, I believe, where there was a ramp just east of Zoo Interlocking, or sorry, west of Zoo Interlocking, that I think they dropped off a lot of their train, and then they continued on up to Kearney, or I think at this point the end point was Croxton Yard, where they terminated. But here was the train still running on the Northeast Corridor. This is still the point in time when Conrail still ran a lot of freight on the corridor before they came up with their various reroutes onto other routes off the Amtrak-owned trackage.
Hey, Neil, can I just say something there, please?
Sure.
In Philly, we used to drop off the mail cars at 44th Street, which was just a little bit west of Zoo Tower at 44th Street in Philly, because that's where we did the set-offs and pickups, because I used to run 11 and 10 off the extra list when I worked for Conrail.
Awesome. Wow, that's great. Yeah, I had forgotten the name of the yard, but I remember seeing 44th Street mentioned in the schedule. So I don't think that yard, I don't know how long that yard lasted, but in the 70s it was still, that's good to know. So great information, great supplemental information. So
Not bad, Neil, for a Zone 2 guy telling you to.
yeah, wow.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
You didn't think I'd let that go by, do you?
Never.
Nope.
Let's see here. Okay, here, actually, this is a little closer to 44th Street. This is at Frankfurt Junction. Not sure. This is an eastbound intermodal in September of 77. I'm guessing it's either Mail 8 or Mail 10. At the time, a lot of the other intermodal had started being shifted off the corridor, but the mail train still continued to run. And so this is presumably a train shortly after dropping off its section, the block for 44th Street. Now it's accelerating and continuing to head east at Frankfurt Junction. Here's westbound Mail 11. This is west of Harrisburg now. We're on the Middle Division. Thompsontown, Pennsylvania, and the SD40-2 that's leading is brand new. I think it was delivered in September or maybe August. So uh, Conrail's Motive Power Assignment Office decided to assign the hottest, newest power to the hottest train on the railroad. So here it is heading west at Thompsontown. Here is another photo that I'd gotten for this article. It may or may not be a mail train. It's kind of hard to tell, but seeing an Alco leading an intermodal train is something you don't see much nowadays, or ended pretty quickly, I think, in the 70s. But with early Conrail, you never know. But this is a mail train, sorry, an intermodal train, maybe a mail train at Homewood, Pennsylvania. Here's a train. This is not a mail train just because it's in Cleveland, but it is probably, you can see it probably came from some of the lake effect snow regions east of Cleveland, whether it was Erie or Buffalo or one of those locations. It's April, but it just kept on snowing. So here's an intermodal train, early Conrail intermodal train heading east through Cleveland. Um, Another intermodal, this one is TV 62 heading through Port Jervis. Um, I showed this one because the Erie-Lackawanna, which is the route that this is an ex-Erie Lackawanna line, they were known for running those UPS trains, Croxton 99, New York 100. And what was interesting to me is seeing that Conrail continued to run those trains via the Erie-Lackawanna for several years. They didn't get it to reroute that traffic onto either the former New York Central or the former Pennsy routes until later on in the 80s. But I think the UPS trains and the mail trains, they may have had different customers, one being the U.S. Postal Service, one being the UPS. But they were, I think, good examples of Conrail competing to try and get that business in the 70s. And this is an example of I'm not sure if this is how much UPS traffic was on this train, but nonetheless, this is an example of another routing for high priority intermodals in those early Conrail days. Um, this photo, Don Altman photo, he wrote this caption with this photo. He said after he took it years later, he's going through it, he's looking at it saying, is this a pair, some helpers holding a train downhill, but there's no caboose? He says, I think this was a mail train running uphill. He said he remembered that there was a stalled train on the other track, and they had to get this high priority train around it. This is, going up the hill, I think near the summit at, what is it, Crescent or Gallitzin, and heading west out of Altoona. So this is probably a mail train. This is a Conrail photo. So this is in the sort of 70s time frame. Another Don photo, a mail train, probably another likely mail train about that right time of the day, westbound in the afternoon in Altoona. And you can see those UPS trailers there with the red. So this is clearly a high priority train and was probably one of the mail symbols. Another Don photo, another mail train that they were very common. You could a lot of photos of them in this part of stretch of track because of their timing. They left Kearney early in the morning and they hit Altoona and Horseshoe Curve sometime around the middle of the day or early afternoon. So here's another example of Conrail doing their best to keep this train moving up the grade at Gallitzin. And now, and I forgive my Conrail friends, I'll show a little Penn Central mail train action from September of 1972. These were Barry Trogu photos. He's been a great source of photos for me of Northeast Corridor and Lehigh Line in New Jersey. He's taken a lot of great shots, and here is one of September 10th of a couple of GG1s with eastbound Train 8 from Chicago going through North Rahway. What's interesting to me about this one is a Penn Central train. You can see it looks like there are flexi vans on this train. So this is before they phased out the flexi vans on the mail trains. They were still running them. By the time Conrail came around, it was just pure, intermodal trailer on flat car. but Penn Central was still using flexi-vans at this point in time. So classic Northeast Corridor scene, GG1s, flexi-vans. It's a great shot by Barry. And on that same day, probably the other eastbound mail train, number 10, at North Rahway with a pair of E44s, looks like. Yep, E44s. And more flexi-vans. This is the train from actually, yeah, 8, trying to get to remember here, 8 and 9 were the Chicago trains, 10 and 11 were the St. Louis trains. So this was the train coming from St. Louis, but it had flexi-vans in it. Looks like all flexi-vans in this case. So this was on September 10th. And then Barry came back a week later and saw a very short mail train. It must have left off a big section at 44th Street. Didn't have much by the time it got to North Jersey on its way to Kearny. So it had a train, a mail train, a short mail train with a pair of E44s leading it. And I think this is my last slide. Same day, September 17th, GG1s with number 10, which was the St. Louis train going through North Rahway. So this is a good time for Barry to be camp out at the North Rahway station waiting for the mail trains to come by. One more. I guess this was the westbound train on that same day, September 17th. He caught it at North Conway just with a single GG1. And once again, you see the flexi vans there. So Penn Central made good use of those on its mail trains. And I think, yes, I think that is it. So that's all I've got for you folks today, and I'll gladly take some questions or take some comments.
Very, very nice.
Yeah.
Thanks very good much, Neil. We used to run those flexi vans right into 30th Street Station underneath the post office there. And
Really?
they used to unload them.
Wow, so that's cool. So you didn't even, it wasn't a 44th Street, it was right into 30th Street Station. Interesting.
Yeah, 44th Street took over when they went to the TOFC.
Right, that makes sense. I guess that was the advantage of flexi vans. They could get them off the train with not as much extra equipment, but yeah, I guess phasing those out did force that change. So interesting.
Tell me, Wyatt, what was the number of the mail train that we had that finally came off when they had a problem with the mail cars and they reduced them to 30 miles an hour? Was that mail 10? It used to run in the middle of the night.
We had four of them, 8, 9, 10, and 11.
No, I mean this was under Amtrak.
Oh, gee.
12 and 13 for
12
sure.
and 13.
Yes, that's it. Right. 12 and 13. Correct.
Right. 12 and 13. Yeah.
You were on 12, Tommy, weren't you? When you came
Yeah.
over to made that little foray to Zone 1?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when I charged over Hellgate Bridge, much to John Springer's demise there. So yeah, I ran that a few times.
No, it never bothered me when you came. It bothered other people. You got to remember, I was the first person to use PC6 seniority in New Haven, so I made a lot of enemies doing that. So you didn't bother me. That was perfectly legit, not a problem.
Sure it was.
Yeah.
I've got a question for Frank.
Yes.
And well, thank you, Neil, as well. Frank, I just had a question about the post office employees that did the sorting there on the RPO. When they got to the terminal, they're away from home terminal, I guess. They were lodged there for the night and then came back on a reverse working the next day? Is that how they worked?
They had
Schedule?
an allowance, a per diem allowance. And in New York, now I'm not remembering, I think it was a New Yorker hotel, but don't hold me to that. For many years, some of the railway postal clerks would rent a whole floor of a hotel. And then they had one person who would sort of manage the people assigning the beds in that floor to clerks as they came in or left and coordinating with the housekeeping staff to clean it up and so on. So they actually bypassed the front desk. That Railway Mail Association, if you will, would just paid for a block booking, if you will, and probably almost a year at a time. I mean, or at least monthly at a time. So that was a better. When they did that, then the clerks were more likely to be able to stay within the per diem limit that they were given by the post office department. Because you don't go to some place like Chicago and New York and, for a few dollars find anything more than a flop house or some place offering you 4 hour motel stays for your lodgings. So for example, up in Boston, the clerks actually had their own club. They bought a house on Bullwinkle Street or something like that. And it was really a house with living room and bedrooms, and because the clerks were cycling through, nobody was ever there the whole time. A lot of them stayed in YMCA's. Pennsylvania Station had a railroad YMCA, as did Washington Terminal had a YMCA. So that's what they did. And then, they either carried the food with them, or they'd go to a grocery store if it was one nearby, or, just go to a snack bar for their meals, whatever they worked out. And I don't know what the TPO clerks in England did for their away from home trips, but I guess I would imagine they had something similar where they had to arrange their own lodging overnight or during the day in between trips.
Right. Interesting. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Neil, that was really good. You got a lot of great photographs there.
Yeah, I did, and I feel very fortunate to have had those photos submitted. I didn't actually run all of them in the magazine article because I didn't have space. So that was the one nice benefit of this presentation to this group, was I got to share more material than I had space for in the magazine. So
They ran them up on the B&A, didn't they? Didn't they have a mail train up there between Boston and Albany, Selkirk?
yes, Penn Central, I believe, did. I didn't go back that far. I'm pretty sure Penn Central did.
Yeah,
But
Carl
by the
Weber
time
was on here.
Conrail came, they were gone.
Yeah. Carl Weber is on here. I bet he's got pictures of that.
I don't know if they ran a mail train on the B&A.
I mean, with the cubes on there, not RPOs.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
But I was looking through my stuff. I got a couple of shots from the shoreline. If anybody's interested.
They did run a train the entire length of the B&A. I think actually came in from Chicago. That was one time it was train 58 and 57. Then in the early 70s, they changed it to trains 5 and 6. And that was discontinued sometime between the summer and the fall of 1972.
All right, that's way too early.
And I do remember I was a high school kid at the time, and I do remember the brakeman on that train telling me something. I may have got it a little bit wrong, but he says they always had one piece of passenger equipment in that train, and that qualified the train to run at passenger train speeds. Most of the time, it looked like an intentionally built rider coach, but sometimes it would be a bud car. Sometimes it would be like a baggage car, or it might be just even a sleeping car. But they always managed to scrunch up one piece of passenger equipment to put into that consist, and that qualified it as a passenger train.
Well, didn't have a post office siding in Springfield, Doug? Just south of the station on the New Haven.
The Sweeney building. And that was up until the 90s. I covered train 13 an awful lot.
Yeah.
And we used to we would just spend about 2 hours just spotting baggage cars for them to load. And once we were ready to go, once they were done that, we'd go south to New Haven and turn it over to the next crew district.
Yeah.
But that was much after this B&A train 5 and 6 ran. That was many years after that.
Gotcha.
Actually, the 12 and 13 that you mentioned, John,
Yeah.
that ran by the shoreline when they first started running it in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And then they switched over to the B&A.
Did it make it to 2000 and something?
I don't think so. It may have, but I don't think so.
I was on it on the last night, and I can't remember when it was. They had us going 30 miles an hour. They ran 30 miles an hour all night, and I was very late getting up there, and that was it. They took it off the next day.
I do remember you're like this, John. I was I believe it was 1994. It was January 2nd. I had Jimmy Naughton for a conductor.
Hop ahead.
We're Spartan's baggage cars at Sweeney Building in Springfield on 13. And number 12 went by, and the conductor of number 12 called up Jimmy Naughton on number 13, and he mentioned that what's his name? The guy with the estimated time of death roster.
Don Murray.
Don Murray. He says Don Murray passed away at 7 o'clock this morning.
Yeah. That was from carrying that estimated time of death roster all in his bag for all those years.
Yeah, now that mail train, didn't they split that at New Haven? Well, split and then rejoin, because there was a Springfield section and a Boston section.
No, when I was on it, it just went to Springfield. We used to, because we would get in early, and I'd run like hell to get up there. I had one way in Deadhead, and Gary Cole would be on the yard job, and we'd swap at the Sweeney Building. I'd finish spotting up the southbound, and he would take my train and turn it on the Y so he could spot it up at the Sweeney Building. And then the southbound engineer would come out, get on there, and I'd go back in that crew car he's talking about and go to sleep.
I covered this number 13 out of Boston a couple of times, and technically that was a passenger carrying train. Had one athlete coach on the rear end.
Yeah.
Almost never had a passenger on it.
No.
One night they didn't have an Amfleet car. They put a sleeping car on the back as the rider car for the crew. That was the night they had a regular paying passenger in the train, and the conductor says, "Boy, you hit the jackpot tonight, sir. You're going to have some first class accommodations you weren't expecting."
Yeah.
Could that number 13 have detoured over the B&A sometime from Boston out to Springfield? Joel Solomon, do you remember something with a train like that with a coach on it that they tried running over the B&A?
Well, it originally ran by the shoreline, and then sometime in the early 1990s, they regularly ran it over the B&A. And I think at one time they might have stopped running it between Boston and Springfield at all, but it was a Boston for us crews. When I was in Zone 1, it was a Boston to New Haven run via Springfield. I do remember that.
Okay, because I felt like when I was dispatching it used to run out of Boston late, like 11 p.m.-ish or something like that.
That's not your imagination. You remember that correctly.
Well, I can't grow hair on my head, but I remember a couple things.
You and me both.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say exactly that, because I remember when it came over, it was coming over the B&A and down.
Oh, I thought you were going to make a comment about hair, because you still got hair.
Nope, not going there.
That was a great presentation between the two of you. That was a lot of history.
Yes, thank you, guys. Very good.
Yeah, that was good.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I'll gladly come back. If you have other topics of interest, I'll be happy to.
Yeah, you and I can talk. We'd love to have you come back.
Great.
Yeah,
Great.
that would be great. And I got that. You didn't tell them how you hoard me out. I have to write a story. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're on the hook. Now you definitely owe me.
I'm on the hook. I started it.
All right.
What's the New York Central's mail trains that ran from New York to Chicago? Once they started getting rid of the RPOs and going with the flexi van cars, New York Central converted a bunch of coaches. They welded up the windows and because they weren't going to get any steam heat in the back there, so they
put a like a kerosene stove in the back and some seats for them guys to run. The rest of the run they could run from the back there once they did it. Even when they still had RPOs, assorted mail, when they were done, they could go in the back to those rider coaches. And like I said, a lot of the windows were welded over, and they had a kerosene stove in the back in case they had cars in there that didn't have steam heat. They weren't going to freeze in the wintertime.
Yeah, those cars you're talking about, Larry, I think when I mentioned about that Albany to Boston train 6, previously 58, normally I think when they had it available, that's what they would use as a rider car in that train. And as I recall, would have been a clerestory roof coach, but I think probably the middle 1/3 of the windows were the ones that were blanked out.
Yeah.
So the windows in the front, windows in the back, but the middle was blanked out.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, that picture that you just showed up there, that's the mail train that we just left Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah, that's right. That used to come by after the morning rush hour. I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock heading west. That's at Hunter there. Yep. I just unfortunately don't have the date in my information here, but I'm thinking this was pretty close to around 2000. I think that was a question. Was how long did this last? And I'm guessing it might have been 2000 or even a year or two after that.
Yeah, geez, I'll have to look back up in my my timetables to see when it came